Okay, so I live in Sebastian. I'm a master herbalist, a master naturalist, an iridologist. I research constantly. This started for me about 20 years ago. And you can sign in there if you want, right that front. And, well, I mean, probably even before then, but heavily 20 years ago. And what led to this presentation now is recently the Boy Scouts just added this merit badge, sustainability, and I'm a merit badge counselor for it. So we got so I am. Yeah, we might need to. They didn't have a lot of chairs, but they said there's yoga mats and even the bicycles are. But yeah, somebody. Oh, I appreciate it. Definitely comment for as long as you can. I know. These are just. I don't want to break them. Break them. There's yoga mats and there's. I don't expect anyone to sit on a bicycle.
Should I restart?
Well, we can edit, right?
Yeah.
Just keep it going.
Oh, you're going to sit there?
All right, so
Don't go forward. Personal chair. What's on a minute?
is your teacher here yet?
No.
So
Sorry.
the audience said there might be some extras coming. And feel free to move the chairs around, as you need to.
Guess what? You were not at the Sebastian High School gym. For some reason I thought that.
I thought that.
So we came out 5'10", all the way up. I'm all the way back.
Where did you come from?
Building.
Oh,
But we found it.
yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I was just saying my background. I've done a lot of research on the sustainability issue, being a merit badge counselor for Boy Scouts on this now. And that's what started this, but this has really grown, and now it's gone backwards into research I did so long ago that is actually, I just was like, that's never going to be relevant anymore, but it actually came back around and it's completely relevant. So this has been updated each time I give it, and my intention is to put this on the internet as soon as I get the final version, which hopefully today is the final version. So I'm not one of those people that is like, don't ask any questions until the end. I want your comments while it's happening, and I want discussion. So if you see something interesting or you can add to it, please feel free to speak up. All right. So with that said, we will begin. So this is titled Sustainability, and I just want to explain why it's called Is the Earth Dying? I was going over the merit badge with the Boy Scouts and my son, who's over there. When I put all the things together of what percentages are actually left and gone from different areas, which you'll see, I said to him, can you believe all this, all these high percentages of things that are extinct now? And he said, yeah, the Earth is dying. So I was like, wow, you're right. And so that's why now this is called Is the Earth Dying? So I'm going to present this almost like an attorney would, and you'll be the final judges. Oh yeah, we can. That's a great idea. Maybe then I should put the table on the outside. A lot of the people from the gym. Does anyone here belong to this gym? See?
But then you left it us here, the gym people. Are you for the seminar? I said yes, so maybe left us here.
I know. I mean, I'm holding it here because I thought the people who work out might be interested, but I've just been at the library. Okay, so sustainability. Is the Earth dying? The Earth is 4.6 billion years old. If we scale that down to 36 years, we have been here for just 4 hours. And our industrial revolution began just 1 minute ago. In that time, we have managed to destroy more than 50% of the world's forests in just 1 minute. 97% of Madagascar's forests are gone. 98% of Haiti's forests are gone. 97% of all the fish in the ocean are gone. If you've ever seen that movie Happy Feet, anybody here seen that movie Happy Feet? That's what they tell you in the first 5 minutes of that movie. It's actual footage, it's a documentary. And a lot of people have no idea that that's actually the point of that whole movie. People think it's about the penguin trying to dance and find love. It's completely about the fact that the penguins can't find any food. 97% of the salmon are gone from the Columbia River. 95% of San Francisco Bay wetlands are gone. 99% of Chesapeake Bay oysters are gone, the famous oysters. 85% of Galveston Bay seagrass is gone. And these are the high percentages that I was talking about. And these are just some of them. These aren't even all of them. So given these high percentages, what percentage of the earth is actually left given these statistics? How is it that the Native Americans managed to live on this continent for over 10,000 years without ever increasing their population or decreasing any others? For 10,000 years, they were a stable community, and their population never increased. Not one ecosystem was ever disturbed or destroyed by them in over 10,000 years. And we've been here in just over 200 years. Where did civilized man even come from? We're different. When they talk about history and they're always saying, America's birthday, 200 years old, or this is when we discovered America, or, I'm always like, who's the we that they're always talking about? People always lived there, but why does it always come from that perspective of civilized man? When the Europeans first came to America, it wasn't all about religious freedom like everybody has been told. They had run out of forests to supply them with wood. The king is who controlled all the forests, and it was a major deal to get any wood to build ships or furniture at that time, or houses. They had run out of clean water, and that's why they always were drinking wine. They needed that sanitization of the alcohol in the water, or else there was too much bacteria, so they didn't have clean water anymore. And they needed a new untouched land for its resources. And now, in just a little over 200 years, civilized man has now done the same thing over here, deforested America, a land that once had so many trees it was said that a squirrel could literally jump from tree to tree and travel all the way across the country that way. That's how many. In Florida even, with the land of flowers. Now you can only see them when you visit one of the state parks. The way, I'm constantly saying, can you believe this is how it used to be? It was always all these trees like the hammocks, which are gorgeous. We just cleared it all. We take it for granted now. That's the problem. We've lost sight of what historically it used to be. We just think this is the way it always was. And yet consumers cannot seem to stop consuming. The planet on which our civilization evolved no longer exists. The stability that produced that civilization has vanished. The Earth we knew, the only Earth that we ever knew, is gone. And this is a quote from Bill McKibben, who is the author of The End of Nature. Robert Jensen, he wrote a book called Arguing for Our Lives. He says, the concentrated energy of fossil fuels really changed the way human beings lived on this planet. Prior to that, the kind of energy to do massive, large-scale global damage to the planet simply wasn't available. For the last 250 years, it has been. And to me, that's the game changer, that we have to recognize that, in fact, things do change, and that the last 250 years have been a kind of experiment in destruction that we either wake up from or we don't. Human activity is pushing the planet beyond the limits it is capable of. It just can't do this indefinitely. It is simply not sustainable. And the definition of sustainable is capable of being continued with minimal long-term effect on the environment, able to be used without being completely used up or destroyed, able to last or continue for a long time, which is what does anyone here not think the planet has limited resources? I mean, this is an obvious question, right? We are at the tipping point now. In fact, what they say is we've already passed the tipping point on making the changes that are going to be needed to make things still continue, basically. And you'll see that as I continue. So they're saying yesterday was the tipping point. It is past time to decide. Can someone let him get it? So it's not that we're at the tipping point now, it was yesterday. This is a logo from a company who makes bags and t-shirts and sells them. Bye Bye Planet. Has it really come down to what this logo suggests? It has been estimated that to meet the demands of our current rate of consumption, we would need the resources of 5 Earths. The problem is we only have the one. Robert Jensen again says, warning signal after warning signal goes unheeded time after time. Humankind is in danger. The magnitude of the environmental crisis demands not more talk, but action, decisive action. Life as we know it in our consumer world is almost over. A large-scale human presence on the planet at this level of consumption is impossible. We can't predict when this party will end, but make no mistake, the party's over, folks. We are in the process of what they're calling the long emergency now. We have entered that zone. And Bill McKibben says, the world hasn't ended, but the world as we know it has, even if we don't quite know it yet. So, has anyone here heard of the trash vortex? Familiar with the trash vortex? When we were doing this merit badge, we were asking the boys, you know, how big do you think the trash vortex is? And they knew, you know, it was this swirling mass of plastic water bottles and plastic bags in the ocean. And like, what was your guess on that? The size of
500,000 square miles.
No, I think you said the size of Rhode Island.
No.
They were guessing the most we'd heard was 1,000 square miles. And we didn't exactly know. It was a new merit badge, so, which is why I went back and did the research to get the right answers. But we were thinking, yeah, you know, maybe 1,000 square miles. Went back to learn it was actually 5 million square miles big. And some estimates saying that it's the size of 2 United States. Plastic water bottles take 450 years to break down. So the question is, you know, how many of us are still using disposable plastic water bottles? This is what I use, and this is just an example, but what you want to get is something that's chemicals in the plastic when it gets heated up, like in the car or wherever, leaches stuff into the plastic. And for pregnant females, it's been known to block the testosterone wash that floods the male babies, I believe it's in the first trimester, which is what determines their sex. And estrogen in the water is a big issue affecting more than just the pregnant females, as you'll see as we go
But
along.
didn't they change the plastic now? I mean, that was the BPA plastic. I mean, right now they don't
They don't make it.
contain BPA anymore.
BPA is also in canned goods. It's the lining of cans. If it doesn't say BPA free, that means it's still in there.
The canned food.
Canned foods, and it's
Okay.
also in like a lot of microwave plastic things you microwave, and when you microwave, that comes out in the food.
No, I mean, but the water bottle, they still have BPA.
Yes.
When you buy it, water
Oh,
bottle.
absolutely they do.
I'm not buying that anymore.
There's some symbol on the bottom that actually
Still
tells you.
using
It
my-
says BPA free.
Or is it freezing?
I don't know how to put my glasses on. I thought that was all it was.
Well, you know, as we go along, not all the time, but. So here's an example of that plastic vortex, which is the Pacific one. That's how big it looks in the Pacific Ocean. What's happening is animals are eating this stuff, thinking it's food, and this is a common thing that you see.
That's sad.
There's actually 5 of them, though. If you look at this map, I mean, they're pretty much taking up the whole ocean. You know, that's what we're doing. And we don't see it. We throw it away. Oh, it's gone. You know, they picked it up in the recycle bin. Well, where do you think that goes? It doesn't decompose for 450 years.
Don't
People
they,
buy that by the case.
don't they
constantly.
recycle the plastic when they
That's
use
what I'm
it?
saying.
That's what-
Well, some of it gets recycled,
Yeah.
but it actually costs a lot more to recycle plastic bags than it's even worth to the people doing it. So I don't even know if they're really doing it. The better invention I saw was somebody who made this machine that takes those plastic bags and can turn it back into the petroleum oil that it's made from. They're like in China, they're using that as fuel, and that would be the way better thing to be doing. But I read that it is so expensive to recycle those plastic bags and turn them back into something that they're not even doing. I don't know where they're taking them, but it's too expensive to even, it's not even worth their money. I mean, who's gonna pay for that? The companies aren't gonna give a profit. So this is what it looks like close up. He's on a boat in the middle of some of this. And here's some more.
What is that?
And rivers. We don't see over here, that's why we don't think of any of this. Because we live in a beautiful, beautiful paradise. We really are fortunate and blessed where we live. But other places, this is what their waterways look like. Just, you know,
Where is that?
Yeah, what is that?
I'm not sure exactly.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I would think on the other less fortunate countries.
They don't recycle that.
And this isn't land. This looks like land. For a long time I thought this was land. This is actually water. And this is what it looks like when you approach it. You know, all of a sudden you hit this border. I mean, I have seen some of this actually in Turkey Creek on that river, which we kayaked for years, and suddenly one year it was so thick you couldn't even kayak over it. It was just, you know, I mean, that's a small river, but, you know, it is happening over here even. And this is a turtle who got caught in the little plastic thing that like a milk container has, and he was small when he went in, but it never came off of him, so he grew up with that on him. This is a scientist collecting some water samples. And, you know, they're just saying, you know, nobody knows this. That's why I'm giving this talk, to bring awareness to this, how it's affecting wildlife.
So you're saying that's what the garbage gets, the garbage gets dumped in the water?
I'm not saying it directly goes in the water, but here's a cartoon to kind of illustrate this. This lobster underneath the surface here, he says, "Quit throwing trash in the lagoon, you stupid tourists." And the turtle says, "That bottle probably didn't even come from a tourist here. It might have traveled hundreds of miles through streams and rivers to get here." So that's the point. It's not just coming from a local place. That has traveled to become those eggs in the ocean.
Yeah, but that's somebody, and I don't mean to sound silly or smart, that's someone throwing a bottle in, or like on
Literally
the cycle.
driving down the road, somebody throws a water bottle outside their window.
You know how we
It can
have,
wind up in the ocean, is what she's saying.
and I'm
Right?
asking what we save in our recycle bins,
You know, I could go backwards and try to connect this.
where, you know, you have garbage,
And
you
that would be the
recycle.
next step, and that's why like these talks help me.
Where does that go?
People have this question, and I don't exactly know
I
how does it
did
go
watch
from
a
the recycle
show.
bin.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, where do they put that? They're not dumping it in the water.
Well, for sure, not everybody is recycling. I mean, we might be recycling.
They don't even recycle
20%.
Fort Pierce.
Because I did see on a television show that you were right, recycling costs a lot of money to do.
Yeah.
That's why they don't really do it. If they wanted to do it the right way, it would cost.
I mean, I don't know how it
Just
gets
wondering how it
from,
got in
and
the
this
river
isn't
like that,
just,
water like that, that's all I'm just wondering.
yeah, so that would be a good thing I'll follow up on to see. You know,
Seriously,
I mean, I have visited
I'm just
recycling
wondering how it all
plants.
came into that vortex that they were teaching the kids.
Well, we actually did have a lot
Is that
of dumping sites in the
Question?
oceans. Instead of just recycling it, we just took everything out and dumped it in the ocean. That was one of our previous plans to get rid of some of the stuff. We have come a long way from there. We don't do as much, but there is no away. So everything that we dumped out there is still out there somewhere. There hasn't been like the massive cleanup, so we still have these issues.
So at one time they did dump it there.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
what I'm saying. Okay.
I mean, now they're even trying to just put it out in space. Let it
Yeah.
just float around out there. Seriously, they literally are. So here's just one more example. This turtle grew up with this tire and it actually formed to the shape of its body. It's part of the shell now. So in addition to the trash vortex, there is a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, which probably a lot of you have heard of, which is equal to the size of New Jersey. And this comes from all the chemical fertilizers and pesticides being used in farming and the manure waste from all the factory farmed animals that are literally standing in their own waste in feedlots. And when it rains, you know, and they hose the things down, this has nowhere to go but into the tributaries, into the water, groundwater, into the Mississippi River, and then ultimately that'll channels down into the Gulf of Mexico. In 2013, last year, it was estimated to be as large as 8,500 square miles, which is the biggest it's ever been. And they're claiming that much of the Gulf of Mexico could actually become an aquatic desert. So factory farming is never a pretty sight, and it's hidden from us, it's hidden from everybody. It's almost a secret what really goes on with the production of food. And here is showing them just absolutely dumping it into the water system, where this is saying no drinking, no swimming, no fishing. It is completely hazardous.
Where is that?
I'd have to go.
Iowa.
Yeah, like in the middle of the
There's
country,
factories
in
now.
Kansas, there's tons of them in Kansas. Yeah, Iowa has the pigs for sure.
Isn't it illegal to throw all that stuff?
No.
That's like on someone's private property, that thing. You know, that's a pond.
Well, we've recently come out with the Clean Water Act, which helps it a little bit with factory standards, but I mean, this is not that far in the past. We're talking like 5
Well, in
years.
1970, they first came out with it, but you mean like an update? Yeah, like in the 70s was when this all became a big, big issue. They invented the American Cancer Society, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. The first Earth Day was then. All this stuff about environmentalism started in the 70s, because that's when it hit a point where, you know, we weren't doing anything to regulate ourselves. We were throwing McDonald's bags out our car windows. That was a common thing. Just throw your garbage out the window of your car. Does anybody remember that?
I didn't do it, but I saw it.
Totally. It was exactly what everyone did. They didn't even think anything of it until they had to put like littering farms. I mean, it was just what they did. So here's in the Gulf of Mexico what the dead zone looks like for the unfortunate fish who have swam into that zone. They just immediately, there's no oxygen in it, so they can't live. So it's not just there in the Gulf of Mexico, it's actually, there's 405 dead zones worldwide totaling over 95,000 square miles. And 85% of the oxygen supply for the planet comes from the oceans, and this is where there's no oxygen. So if you take this map and you add those trash vortexes, can you see how we're like crowding out all of the water? I mean, you know, we're on land, so we're not out there, so we don't see it. So that's what I'm saying. You combine these with the trash vortexes, and it's not hard to see where this is headed for our oceans. And here's a little chart here showing like in 1910, you know, that's when there was like hardly any. But it dramatically started to rise. See, 1970, that was a significant rise. But 80, then 90, completely more than doubled, shot up. 2007, this goes up to, I mean, it's just like everything else. You know, that's the past. If all these charts in here look the same, no matter what they're talking about, all of a sudden we did something where maybe it was a population explosion, but we just lost all inhibition for doing anything, you know, with care. So pesticides from commercial farming are also affecting other ecosystems. Bees have been around for over 200 million years. 200 million years, and lived during the time of the dinosaurs. Yet today, 50 to 90% are estimated to be gone, which has just really occurred again since the 70s, in the last 30 years mostly, after living 200 million years. These are responsible for 15 to 30% of the food we eat, and most farmers depend on them for pollination. In one day, bees can visit 1 million flowers within a 400 square kilometer area from just one hive in just one day. from 1971, see, to 2006, this goes up to about half of the U.S. honeybee colonies have vanished. Einstein once predicted that if bees were to disappear, man would follow only a few years later. And if anybody didn't see the bee movie with Seinfeld, okay, that's what that was about. At the end of that movie, they showed how without the bees, they had all these fruit trees, that there was no way they were going to produce any food. And that was the end of that movie. Yeah.
What is the name of that movie?
The bee, the other one, Happy Bee?
It's just called The Bee?
The bee movie.
The Bee, I never heard of it.
B-E-E.
I want to get a copy.
It's a cartoon.
Okay.
These are, see, they're trying to appeal to kids, or the parents who take their kids to the kid movies, and they're trying to put these messages, you know, in a nice,
Yeah, I never saw
entertaining
it.
way. Yeah, the B-E-E.
I never even
It
heard
was like a few years ago. Jerry Seinfeld was the voice of the main
I
character.
want to get it.
The one thing I'll say on that movie, they did have all these boy workers, but in reality, it would be female workers if you're not familiar with the concept of bees and ants are mostly females, not males. Okay, so it doesn't matter what the farmer does if there are no bees. A grower can have the best location, the best soil, the best fertilization, the best pest control, the best fungus control, the best irrigation, and the very best cultivars. But if there are no honeybees to take pollen from point A to point B, we will be the ones having to do that. We'll have to get out there with a paintbrush. That's how you do it by hand. Certain plants that you have to literally paint the inside of the flower, put it in another flower. And that's what we're going to have. That's what it's going to come down to. But they're going to have people doing that. At the same time, our human population is not shrinking. In fact, it is increasing. There is more demand than ever for a varied diet now than at any time in history. And there is currently a deficit of pollinators. So we can't afford to lose the bees. So bats are another one. They've been around for 52 million years. Most bats eat up to 2,000 insects every night. They are a natural pest control. They devour up to 600 mosquitoes in an hour. It's highly encouraged to put a bat, what do they call it, bat box? Like a house. What is it called? Bat. Remember?
Bad house.
Yeah, you know, put one in your yard if you're complaining about mosquitoes. They'll eat up to 600 in every hour. So the loss of bats is devastating to farmers as well because they're another form of natural pest controllers. And the bats are also being poisoned by eating the pesticide-contaminated insects and plants. And they're now facing extinction after 52 million years. Frogs and amphibians have been around for over 300 million years and successfully survived the last 3 mass extinctions. Yet they are now facing extinction. Many scientists, after millions of years, you know, like the first time I gave this, I didn't have their age. So that was something I added to really show you. They've been around so long, and we kill them in 30 years. Frogs are the greatest friend of the garden because they eat up to 15,000 pest insects each year, and amazingly, none of the good guys. They eat only the bad guys. I don't know how they do it, but they don't harm any of the beneficials. The chemicals that we're dumping into the waterways are causing an excess of estrogen, and it's changing the male frogs into females. So there's a surplus of pregnant females that have no males to lay their eggs on. The way the frogs breed is the male will put out a cloud of sperm in the water, and the female will just put her eggs on top of that cloud of sperm. They don't actually have to sit on top of each other, even though I have seen that. So when they can't find any males doing that, they're just literally carrying their pregnant bodies around, and they're not dumping them. You know, it's like going way past the time when they should have dumped it, and they're actually collecting any male frogs they can find and trying to, you know, preserve them and, you know, with man's help, make them reproduce as males. So they're also dying out from pressure from the expansion of agriculture, forestry, pollution, disease, and climate change. And again, this increases the demand for chemical pesticides without all these natural predators that would naturally be doing this. So in summary, 98% of all the species that have ever lived, which if any of you have watched that show Extant, that's now on with Steven Spielberg as a producer. Okay, it's almost over, but it's on Wednesday nights. And she even says in there, Halle Berry's the star, that, you know, they say like 99.9% of all the species that ever lived are gone. But I was like, okay, here's another show, kind of trying to show people, you know, but they put it in the sci-fi show, so no one's really going to take it literally or seriously, but it is literal. And they have this whole exhibit up in Gainesville at the Florida Museum of Natural History. If you go up there, big walls of these writings, like, you know, and showing the way things used to be, and it's you know, it's up there. That's where I got a lot of the start of this years ago. So some estimates say that every 24 hours we lose somewhere between 30 and 150 species, which is like every half hour losing a species, every half hour. They are all leaving the planet. So what does that mean for us? Humans themselves are becoming sterile. When they tested the hamsters with the GMO food that we're eating now, it produced sterile hamsters by the 3rd generation. Egg and sperm quality is a known fact that is steadily declining in humans because of the poor quality food that we're eating. This leads to weaker and weaker generations of the human race. And for humans, they say it takes 120 years to produce a sterile generation. But by then, you know, you can't go backwards and try to fix that. And we're already in the 2nd, if not 3rd generation of this. This isn't just today. This has been happening. There's a forum, Natural News. He reports that the ones who will survive will be the ones with the strongest gene pool, because that's what nature does, which are going to be the ones not eating this contaminated food. And he calls this the great genocalypse of the human race, because it's going to be based on who has the strong genes. He even went so far as to say, you know, when you're selecting a mate that you want to have children with, you know, maybe ask them what their diet is. I mean, you know, he's like, don't just base it on how they look or what your common interests are. If you're really going to produce offspring, you know, make sure that they're eating well to begin with, and not just fast food and junk food and, you know, all this garbage. There's a guy, Bertrand Russell, in 1930. He was a Nobel Prize winner, and he predicted that all but 5% of males and 30% of females would be sterilized, and that artificial insemination would be the preferred natural method over natural method. And this is 1930, so this is before Hitler. This is right after the Great Depression.
Why female more than male? 30% females versus 5%. Why is 30% female versus 5% male?
Why?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is his prediction. I'm just saying he saw this coming, and he's really well known for all kinds of writings. He won a Nobel Prize for it. So we are literally in the Sixth Great Mass Extinction. This is not just a phrase that I'm making up. They are literally calling this now the Sixth Great Mass Extinction, and it's happening at a rate 1,000 times faster than any other extinction in history. 100% caused by the way humans are living on this planet and the choices we are making and how we feed ourselves. It's not what kind of car we drive. It's not what kind of light bulb you have in your house. It's what kind of food are you eating. We are no longer called Homo sapiens. We are now called Homo destructivus, which means destructive humans. And again, you'll see this in Gainesville. If you go to that museum, this is not a term I'm making up. So for the first time in 2008, 65% of all our food was imported, which was more than we grew for ourselves. And it's predicted by next year that 46% of all the U.S. fresh vegetables will come from China. I don't know if you know this, but they're actually importing now, they're taking the chickens we raise here and they're shipping them off to China to get processed, 7,000 miles each way, back and forth, so that's a total of 14,000 miles to process the chicken and then sell it over here. And they don't say, that's why you never hear, oh, this is, you know, it's raised in America, but it's not processed here. They ship it 14,000 miles to China and back to process it there and bring it here. So,
And why?
because it's cheaper. And China is known for the worst quality standards of anything. And of course, it would be the worst quality standard. It's the cheapest place, you know? People, quality and money are related. The typical American does not care what he eats as long as it is cheap. And all the time you see those commercials about the dollar menu or, you know, everything's like $1 this, $1 that. And it's like, well, how do you think they're making that for $1? You know, like nobody thinks about any of this. But I do. Family farms have been disappearing at the rate of 1 farm per hour. Between 2005 and 2006, we lost 8,900 farms, which was equal to 2 acres of farmland every minute. Since 1935, we've lost over 5 million farms to unsustainable big commercial agricultural practices. And so about 15,000 years ago, when they say we first started growing agriculture, the world's first farmer had the idea of saving the seeds from one year's crop and planting them again next year. And that's how farmers did it for thousands and thousands of years after that, until Monsanto. So, I don't know if you've heard of Monsanto, but, you know, for all the damage they're doing, they can't hide themselves. They're so huge that this isn't, if they could be secret, they would be secret. But they're not, they're too big. They're doing so much damage. Whoever controls the seed bank of the world controls the world's food supply. Monsanto owns the lion's share of all patented rights to thousands upon thousands of seeds in the seed vault that exists under the Arctic cap. It's buried deep in the frozen Arctic. You know, they have one kind of every seed of every plant, because that's how you preserve seeds to make them last. You have to totally freeze them in the coldest temperatures. They control most of those seed patents. And they only release a few varieties each year for people to actually grow again and eat. And worse than that, they're making the plants sterile. So they're not just making the humans sterile, they're making plants sterile. Almost 96%, 96, here's another high percentage of all the commercial vegetable varieties that were available in 1903 are now extinct. They're not just hidden, they're not just not being offered, they're gone from our planet.
Why would they purposely make the plants sterile?
Okay, we'll get into that. They're actually splicing these terminator genes into the plants at the genetic level, into their DNA, so that they purposely can't reproduce. And what they say is they're doing this so that the farmer will have to keep rebuying seeds every year from them, so that they're not, you know, they're saying it's for business purposes. They want to control the supply of the seeds. There's a film called The Silent Forest, which speaks about how they're doing this to trees as well. They're making trees sterile, and this is for the paper producing industry, so that no bugs will bother the trees. So they're creating trees that won't produce nuts, seeds, pollen, fruit, flowers, etc. So no wildlife will be able to feed on them. There will be no offspring from the trees and no insects. And that's what they want. Nothing, they want like a sterile tree. And this helps the paper industry. We use so much paper. The only company that so far has been listed as not buying genetically engineered created paper is, what's that? Kinko. But we don't have one of those around here. But supposedly they're big on trying to make people aware that they sell paper that has not been genetically engineered. So they're predicting in 20 to 30 years we will have completely decimated the forest, and any contaminated trees become the property of Monsanto. And this happens with the farmers in the field, and the wind pollination and all that. And there's a website, globaljusticeecology.org, if you want to learn more about that. But The Silent Forest, you could probably rent that on Netflix. So without trees, the rain disappears. A lot of people think rain comes from clouds. It's actually trees that create a lot of the rain. And that's why when the trees are gone, the earth becomes desert, and we're reducing our oxygen supply. Again, not just the oceans, but also the air. In the time of the dinosaurs, oxygen was so plentiful that dragonflies actually literally had 6-foot wingspans. And millipedes were several feet long, like in the movie Godzilla. If you read, that movie was so cool to me because it showed these giant insects. And again, people wouldn't have known that was really the way they were. They literally were humongous. Armadillos were as big as Volkswagens. And this is also in the museum in Gainesville. So the current size of these species is evidence of the depletion of oxygen on the planet today. And that's what they say, the trees are the lungs of the earth. So if we're cutting down all of the trees, and it, of course this can't be too hard to believe. I mean, just look outside, there's no trees. We've got like oaken trees on everyone's yard, but
We got rain though.
well, see, this Indian River County is actually the driest in Florida, the driest county, and Sebastian is the driest city in Florida. So every time it rains,
Where I come from, we got more rain.
where do you come from?
Well, we have more.
It's because of the Sebastian Inlet, the wind pushes it away every time. So today's food supply has been weakened at best, contaminated at worst, and is often the very cause of the cancer we seek to avoid. It has been genetically manipulated. It is critical in today's world to stop trusting what is offered on the shelves at the grocery store for the needs of your body. Shopping at the grocery store and not buying organic is not good enough anymore. Consumers can vote with their dollars and their food choices. If you don't like what you are learning today, you can start to write a different ending to this story. Children are suffering.
How can we get the organic food though to be less expensive?
You know why it's
That's
more
what I need to
costly?
write a letter to,
It's more expensive because the other food is being subsidized by the government. It's not that it's more expensive to grow, it's that they're paying the farmers to grow the other food. They pay the farmers subsidies
To grow, not
to
the
grow
organic
corn,
food.
to grow whatever the other kinds are, and that's, if they weren't doing that, the farmers would not be in business.
So that's where it has to stop. Right?
Where?
So that we can have affordability.
It
for
has to
organic
start with-
food.
Well, you know what, when people say organic food is too expensive,
I'm not saying it's too expensive, I'm saying it's more expensive, and therefore for other people, it is too
somebody once
expensive.
said that the question isn't why organic food is expensive, the question is why is that other food so cheap? That's the question.
It's imported from China, from Mexico. It's cheaper than.
Well, what you
And,
can do, and what I did for 3 years, is try to teach people how to grow their own food.
That's right.
And then you'll see that more in here. But, so children are suffering as much as adults these days with the same adult diseases that used to take decades to acquire, but not anymore. Now the children are getting these same diseases themselves as children, which is like heart disease, diabetes, obesity, which we, if you look at shows like The Partridge Family and The Brady Bunch from the 70s, and even Woodstock, that concert that was, they have video footage of, those people there were extremely thin. Like, look at Lori Partridge, and Keith Partridge. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? But in Woodstock, the people weren't just skinny. They were actually huge. They were muscular. They looked like, I don't know, Tarzan. In that actual footage of Woodstock, you see all these guys with their shirts off. Yeah, they're doing the drugs and they're drinking and everything, but they weren't emaciated by any means. They had no body fat and they were muscular. Our world has changed. When the Europeans first came over here, they couldn't believe that the Native Americans were in such good physical shape. They couldn't believe they had the shape of a V in their body, which means they had a waistline. They couldn't believe they had their real teeth still in their mouth. And they had their hair still. I mean, they were all wearing wigs, the Europeans. And they, like George Washington lost his teeth at 19 years old. They didn't even have dentists then. They would put metal wires in their mouth to try to create like teeth that, it was so painful for them to eat food, but it was common to lose your teeth at 20 for the Europeans. They ate so much sugar and, the white bread, which is like the It was thought you were rich if you could afford white bread because it was so milled and all the grains were taken out of it, and like Wonder Bread. And they thought it was a sign of wealth if you ate that way, and it was destroying their health. And the people, like the peasants who ate the brown bread and the brown potatoes or whatever they were living on, they were actually much healthier. The slaves who grew the sugar cane for their plantation owners, who converted that into sugar, which is a drug. It's more concentrated than cocaine. And they were all eating this white sugar. They were all getting the cancers of the mouth and stuff back then. The slaves were eating the actual sugar cane, chewing on it, and it was healing their mouths from any sort they had. So we've just taken regular things from nature and destroyed them. So today's children are the first generation of Americans actually projected to have a shorter lifespan than their parents. So that's what I'm saying. It's starting already. We're weakening our species. And they're saying 1 out of 3 is at risk of developing type 2 diabetes, which only used to be an adult disease. Obesity is expected to increase by 65 million more adults in 2030. And I was surprised that, why don't they give us any credit that we're going to, get better at this? Like, why are they predicting, how are they even coming up with this number? We're going to be that much worse. Here it is today, there's 36%. Obesity, by the way, wasn't even a term they used in the 70s. Then it was just overweight. We didn't go into that category then. This became a term in the 80s. And by 2030, 50% of us. And diabetes is also expected to increase, even if obesity stayed the same, which is one of the causes for diabetes. But even if it stays the same, they're saying diabetes is going to increase. So I'm asking the question, why? Why are they saying we're going to get worse? And this is a guy, saying diabetes sucks. They have to give themselves injections several times a day, probably. I'm not really sure how often, but just 1 can a day of soda increases your chance of diabetes by 20%. Alzheimer's is also expected to increase. I just heard this on the radio last month by 81%. So again, why? Why are we getting worse? Here's today, there's 35 million people with Alzheimer's. By 2030, they're saying 65 million. By 2050, just up, 115 million
But
adults.
why doesn't the government ban the use of, let's see, all those ingredients? You see a long list of ingredients when you buy anything. You have to check the ingredients. Why
All right,
don't
well,
they
that's
ban?
in here. Let's keep going.
Well, because if they start doing that, then they're gonna start telling you other things they
Well,
can't do.
here's one example. This is going to come up later on in here, but since you're asking it now. NutraSweet is another word for aspartame. Aspartame is equal, or NutraSweet, is an artificial, chemically created ingredient that FDA scientists were fully aware it was causing brain tumors in rats that they were testing it on. They fought extremely hard not to approve that drug. And Commissioner Hayes, who was the commissioner of the FDA at that time, was given $35 million as a bribe to approve that by Monsanto. Monsanto is so wealthy. They go back and forth. If they need something approved, they go into that position, they approve it, then they come back and work for Monsanto. If they need a judge to approve it, they become the judge, then they approve it. I have a book I wrote, Closer to the Sun, which I have copies here. In there, I list all the people, and I show their faces, who went back and forth between Monsanto and whatever they needed approved. They can work both sides of it.
Well, it's a terrorist organization, isn't it? It's like
Yeah, they say the FDA is absolutely, I mean, the whole thing is extremely corrupt.
Criminal.
Yeah, we'll get into
They
that.
are criminals, no doubt about it.
So cancer is also expected to increase 30% by 2030. And I heard it while I was in Connecticut this summer, they're building a new hospital up there because they're expecting the cancer patients to triple in just the next decade, to triple from, right now it's pretty much 1 in 3, 1 in 2, which in 1900 it was 1 in 20. In 1970, before 1970 it was 1 in 7. They created the American Cancer Society. It became 1 in 5. In other words, it's getting worse.
So for all that money that's
Could it be
donated,
because at that time they really didn't know? Don't forget, medicine is practice. It's practice, practice, practice.
They didn't
So
know.
maybe at that time they just weren't more aware.
And then it became 1 in 3. Now I'm saying
Because
in
we're becoming
15
more
years it's going to
knowledgeable.
be 80%. 80%. And the kind of cancer that is increasing the most is pancreatic cancer. If you look at this chart of their prediction, which the pancreas is the hardest of all the organs to heal from cancer. And there are natural ways to heal cancer, but they are made illegal in this country. And if a doctor is practicing a natural way to heal cancer, they have to give up their license and they're fined, and they're like, so they move out of the country. They're in Mexico. Or if you want to go for a natural treatment, it's illegal to do it any other way besides chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery in our country. It's illegal.
Isn't that Gerson?
Yeah, Gerson therapy is one, which I'm certified in. But there's others. There's plenty of others, and it's not that hard to treat cancer. They just won't allow it.
treat it with food, right?
There's like breast cancer. I went to a seminar. This woman was putting on this. It's like a black. There's different recipes for this, but it's like a black paste. And she was treating the females with it, and she showed slide after slide of how it just comes out, and it actually has tentacles. So you can't just surgically cut things off because you don't know where the tip of that tentacle is. It has to come out by itself, and then it comes out completely. And it's not hard, it's not expensive, and that's why it's illegal, because cancer is a huge business in this country. They don't want to find a cure. That would put so many people out of business. They don't want a cure, they want to increase cancer. By the year 2020, possibly as early as next year, they're saying pancreatic cancer will move from the 4th leading cause of cancer death to the 2nd. And pancreatic cancer, does anyone here know anyone who's ever had pancreatic cancer? You go quick with that. There's nothing.
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah. So,
But because it's difficult to deduct, isn't it? Like,
well,
to
here's,
find-
I write about this in my book as well, but when a fetus is forming, the cancer cells are the same cells as that trophoblast cells that form a developing fetus. When a fetus is forming in the uterus, it's actually like a cancer tumor through the body. And when
Excuse me,
Yes.
I am locking up, so when you walk out, the door's gonna lock behind you,
Okay,
just to let you know.
thank you.
Shut off the lights.
Okay. So, if you've ever seen the exhibit, The Bodies, has anybody seen that? The Bodies, where they have these Chinese people with their skin removed?
Yes, I
It's
know.
really
So you
big.
can see all their organs, and they
Saw
put them
it
in these
Las Vegas.
athletic poses, playing tennis, playing soccer, but they've got no skin. And they donated their bodies for this purpose. But we went to that exhibit, it was in Tampa, it's been in Fort Lauderdale, it traveled around the world. And they had a tumor there in a box, a plastic glass box, and it was about this big. That tumor had eyes on it, it had a row of teeth. Not like as a face, it was just different parts of it. It had hair growing on it, because it's the same cells as what a developing fetus is. So in the human body, when you're developing a fetus, it's the estrogen from the female that increases the division of cells splitting and, becoming that baby. Is because of estrogen. That's why estrogen is cited as being such a bad thing that causes cancer, because it's a stimulant for cancer cells to split and divide. But in the developing fetus, what shuts that division off, which is what cancer does, right? It just keeps dividing and dividing and dividing, is when the pancreas develops in the fetus. And the pancreas then is where all the enzymes come from in the body. The enzyme production from the pancreas is what shuts down that division of the cancer cell, which is them, is us, the fetus, developing fetus. So if the pancreas, has cancer itself, then you've got no mechanism to stop any of that. It's the pancreas which is what shuts it off in the development